Lesson 2, Soul's Playhouse of Dreams. All would admit that our experiences is of our whole life, but most would probably find it unnecessary for us to have the experience of lifetimes to function as we do in this lifetime. The Eck Dream 2 Discourses on page 29 tells a lie when it ignores that reincarnation was not a part of early Christian doctrine, as even documents considered for the Bible in the 2nd and 3rd centuries of the Common Era attest to. Original sin may not have existed in Christian doctrine at all until Augustine. Harold Klemp is right about the fall of Adam and Eve, not estranging humanity, but hardly a devout Christian would say that is when people became cut off from divine love. Even though hate is an overwhelming feature of Christianity, it's mentioned 10 times as much. They talk about love, but they have all these verses of hate that they just, well, we're not going to talk about that as much, but it's there, Eckankar doesn't call it original or hereditary sin. The past lives are projected upon unexplained events. Our abilities is being deserved as a result of past lives. Christianity may call for a belief in Jesus being an intermediary, but Eckankar invites to reconciliation and return to God in the terms of Eck. Eniod corporate kinesis, is that what that means? Masters, who were worshipped in an intercessory fashion. Paul Twitchell talks of Eck masters in terms of saviors, and Harold Klemp talks of himself as paying for the karma of others. The difference is that everything still counts, and Eckankar is deceitful about missionary work being encouraged rather than admitting that is what they do. Don't you think this means that Eckankar has the same 3 fundamental teachings of Christianity? Eckankar followers are different than most in that they insist their life required them to live many others to explain it. Do dreams prove past lives happened? Are organize an understanding of what we learn of when we are awake. There is more to ignorance and evil than just being part of some sort of progress. Do dreams prove we are not evil? Eckankar wants its followers to think its leader is a Mahanta, our spiritual being that comes and shows them the broad and specifics of life on a personal level, as opposed to how most think spiritual guides just guide through the actions of their physical body. Dreams and other spiritual experiences of both leaders and individual believers play a key role in far more faiths than Eckankar. Harold Klemp lies about how Christianity sees dreams as a curiosity and should know that every major faith that has accepted personal dreams as a generally valid form of learning. It is the secular world that has downplayed personal experiences more than religious conservatives. A member of Eckankar wrote in about his deep frustrations in taking things in context of a spiritual existence might have ended his suffering and may be difficult for a man who lives on an expense account and gets a middle-class salary to understand. But lacking in terms of the physical world is usually not because of a lack of responsibility. Man's search for wisdom is too long a series of events to have been in recorded history. Why must people from the past have come back through reincarnation to continue their search for understanding? Habits and fears can be explained through this life. Just because aversion and attraction are not readily explained through current circumstances, it doesn't mean that there is a need to address them through metaphysical means. Behavior modification is an integral part of almost any spiritual program. It is not only our past that affects us, but the collective past of humanity. Dream study can be religious, but let's not devalue the use of certain elements of it in psychotherapy and other elements of secular life. Well, basically psychology has just secularized stuff that was always part of whatever. It's like you can go to a masjid, and there's a tradition in Islam that you can go, that after dawn, they would discuss dreams. Now, I haven't witnessed that person as a formal thing. I've witnessed some of it, but nowadays people pay psychiatrists instead of having a discussion after the dawn prayer. The source of a past fear may be seen through dreams, but would you credit your dream characters for you overcoming a fear? People may turn against religion due to what they think spirituality did to them. It may be useful for everyone to trace out why they don't like things. How habits can cause problems is when we fulfill one desire through means, then ultimately drag us down in that respect. The use of plants and chemicals as recreational drugs and entheogens are substances that cause intoxication for sorcery are specifically brought up in that context. Eckankar doesn't promote that. Al-Quran, Surah 37, verse 47, uses the same word for something that causes physical, mental, or emotional harm that later became used for alcohol and was used for what Islam teaches a fire being or spirit cannot be. Gaul. We don't believe in ghouls. Muslim is one of the narrators for that, but anyways, life can provide the benefits of experience without intoxication. Belief and awareness are considered essential to progressing upon the path of Eckankar and all other paths, I presume. Beliefs are formed by familiarity and agreement. Belief becomes faith when experiences and awareness are connected to those beliefs. The claim is that the second initiation is where people are supposed to know firsthand that the spiritual leader of Eckankar is the Mahanta, the living Eckmaster, the Dream Master, and the inner and outer master. And, we look at this and say, okay, they say you get the first one within the first year, and they give you a certificate, regardless of what you said. And in the second year, they let you write off, to actively participate in it. And then they send you back the paper that you can get the initiation. And so in the third year, they're presuming that either you've had the initiation or you're about to get the initiation. So I've yet to hear of any experience that anyone in Eckankar had that necessitates such an interpretation of faith. The Eck Green 2 Discourses by Harold Klemp hints at the first two of the psychic flames as being psychological projections on page 34 when he says, these experiences happen primarily on the astral and causal planes, where dramas are easy to stage. We and other people can program experiences in Eckankar members and practitioners. We and other people can program experiences in the third and final psychic heaven in Eckankar belief are the mental and etheric planes. Many Eckists are Eckankar members and practitioners will tell people of altered states and other spiritual experiences they had through other paths before becoming a member of the Eckankar Corporation. Is Harold Klemp wrong in ignoring the linguistic and other evidence for the corruption of the original messages of other faith and taking an imperialist or missionary orientalist approach and speaking of an evolution of spirituality? I certainly would not recommend armchair scholarship. Just like many in Eckankar, Harold Klemp has some familiarity with the teachings of Joseph Campbell. Why don't you just read The Hero with 1,000 Faces and come up with your own conclusions? And or other ones, right? The formula of separation, enlightenment, and reintegration can be used to summarize the hero and heroine. John Perry published a paper outlining this same 3 stages of schizophrenic fantasy in 1962. We should make our own hero journey where we go beyond what is expected or required to develop something that can benefit others. The authentic saint needs no drugs to have his awakening. However, we do not have to go into the state where one is delusional in terms of the established facts of physical reality. Julian Silverman of the National Institute of Health distinguished between the essential schizophrenia of the shaman and magician and that of the paranoid schizophrenic or in a 1967 paper. And there's other types of schizophrenia as well, of course. There's the disorganized schizophrenic and the catatonic schizophrenic, and isn't there some other one? What is the difference between psychosis, drug-induced psychedelic experiences, and true mystical experiences? Well, some people would say the latter two can be combined, right? Harold Klemp simplifies this by saying the difference is about a capability to thrive in the inner planes. According to more of Harold Klemp's works than his autobiography, Trilogy, and Autobiography of a Modern Prophet, Harold Klemp spent time in a mental hospital for paranoid schizophrenia and disorganized schizophrenia after years as a member in Eckankar. Has he remained such a truly unbalanced person since becoming the leader of Eckankar? Ecstatic trance, schizophrenia, and the experiences of the spiritual hero are not necessarily three states of consciousness. They are told apart by their cause and their results. The Dream 2 Discourses by Harold Klemp has the doctrine that psychedelic experience is only of the physical, astral, and causal planes on page 36. Aren't the spiritual exercises of Eck, any odd corporate kinesis, full of the same hypnotism and psychic arts? Schizophrenic-like conditions of mental illness usually have the factor of recreational drug use, but most would still negate that it is a lower astral nightmare or a touch of hell in this life to pay for self-abuse and violating the rights of others. The spiritually heroic is the only one of the three that didn't get his experiences through drugs, nor intend to merely experience psychedelics. It is out of devotion and can even result in the higher consciousness of what is truly metaphysical or holy, that is called Ekshar in Eckankar terminology. This mystic is heroic in that his psychedelic states and experience of unseen spiritual realms takes him to a station of connectedness, which increases his righteousness in society. Eckankar goes too far with the cosmic consciousness as to be supportive of ideas that we are all actually one being. God awareness or God realization is the next stage in Eckankar after self-realization and cosmic consciousness. Don't people see people they know about in visions and dreams without them being what some would call a god or goddess? There is a huge difference between the delusions of grandeur that are thinking you have become an omnipresent, omniscient, and omnipotent representative for your deep submission to God. Wouldn't it be better to consider Al-Quran, Surah 53, 1 through 18, incorrect in how it shows that the highest ascents of the holy paradise beyond the heavens to still leave you as clearly separate from God? Not the same being. You still have your identity. You still have your, good mental and emotional health. You have to step aside from that. Ripazar, Tars, Hedar, Zask, Dapren, Wahazi, and others seem to be mere projections upon consciousness instead of actual inner guides. Eckankar uses that term far country to refer to the visionary realms. The Ek Dream 2 Discourses by Harold Klemp on page 37 says, one must be experienced and comfortable in all worlds, become a master in Ek. How then could Harold Klemp be an Ek master with his physical and mental health problems? The discrepancies and contradictions in his speeches and other works should make it clear enough that Harold Klemp was probably the least able of the three historic leaders of Eckankar to prepare and establish a Chela or Eckankar initiate as a being of the inner worlds through things like dreams. A traveling Canadian was full of anxiety when she heard of a British plane that crashed, causing 40 to die, and another that landed before planned. She stuck to her original plans after an attempt to spiritually submit, calmed her worries. She dreamt of a bomb threat that led everybody to leave the house, except her daughter, who remained unharmed in the blaze. Could this have been her mind telling her to stop worrying over nothing? She later had to switch planes twice on the way home. The third plane was behind on fueling and maintenance, but she returned home safely. Isn't Harold Klemp just being arrogant and claiming it was him that led her home safely? Spiritual insight is said to come through dreams, but I would question whether or not focusing on a set of dogma until one reasons it out in a dream to be guidance. The dream of a retired man deciding not to beat the old woman ahead of him up the stairs was probably not about spiritual unfoldment, but death or hardship, for making more of an effort than needed. Sleep and awakened states are meant to support each other, though. A forklift driver of dreams, going to wisdom temples, and colleagues on the inner planes, just projects his desires to take part in the wondrous places and education he lacks ability to have in his physical universe. His dreams of working at moving bales of love, freedom, wisdom, understanding, and humility was probably a way for him to figure out that he was supposed to get these traits in mundane life rather than fantasy. Now, if you roll 3 dice and you get 333 to represent a minor arcana tarot card, you're going to end up with the cruelty card. And the talk about beating somebody up the stairs, this was 3:33 p.m. my time when I was reading that. So the love, freedom, wisdom, and understanding and humility is probably a way to figure out this was to embrace mundane life rather than fantasy. But Eckankar can kind of say, oh, well, this word here exists here and this word exists here. So breaking that into 5 and something you're supposed to obtain, you're on through the heavens into the soul plane and that sort of thing. And very appropriately on the left side of the picture, oh, I can't really point too well, can I? But are the remaining only psychological? So there's physical, but then but among the physical, some spiritual things can happen and stuff too. So I'm not saying anything different.